Well, now that we've seen how a few block tags work, let's try out another type of tag, and this is called an inline tag. An inline tag is in line with the text, and it doesn't create a separate block of text, it just modifies a small portion. So let me just take a word in the middle of this sentence, and I'll just add in a strong tag. And of course, I'm going to add a closed strong tag at the end. And we saw our strong tag in the earlier chapter. It's going to format that text strongly or boldly. So let's save our page, and let's go back over and refresh the browser. You can see that that word is indeed bolded, and you can see that we haven't made a different block of text. We've simply modified that piece of text inside the original paragraph block. Of course, another example of an inline tag that we saw earlier is the M tag. So let's use that down in this second paragraph. And again, we saw that before. I'll add an M tag at the beginning of a word, and I'll put the end 2 words down. We'll save our changes, and I expect when I refresh the page that I'll see some italicized text down here at the bottom. Now, these 2 tags actually do show the difference with HTML5 from previous versions of HTML. We now use tags called strong and M, but in the early days of HTML, we used tags called B and I. They were pretty easy to remember because B stood for bold and I stood for italics. We can still use these tags today, but it's generally recommended not to because those 2 tags really only convey part of the information. Now let's just give both of those tags a try. I'll go to a few words in front of the strong tag, and I'll use a B tag for bold. We'll add a closed B tag. And I'll do the same thing down in this paragraph. I'll go a few words before the M tag, and I'll add in an I tag for italic. Of course, a /I tag for the end. We'll save our changes, and let's refresh our browser page. Now, if you look at those 2 words, they both look bolded exactly the same. And the same thing's true down here for the italicized words. But what we're learning is the difference here is that when we use the bold tag, that's really all we're going to get. We're going to get a bolded word or a bolded piece of text. Whereas the strong tag is actually indicating more. It looks the same on the page, but it indicates that this text should be considered stronger than the other text around it. And the same thing with emphasize versus italics. We're only seeing an italic format. With the M tag, we're stating that those words should have emphasis. And using these distinctions, our modern browsers and applications will be able to interpret this content correctly. Now, while we're still talking about tags and context, let's try out a couple of other new tags. I'll go back to my Chapter 2 Work Files folder, and let's open up the Try Out Special Formats HTML document. Once again, I'll just double-click it so we can see what it looks like in the browser first. And of course, I want to edit this file, so let me drag it over to my text edit icon and open it on up. Now, this file, like the others, has some basic formatting. I've got all the required HTML tags for a page up at the top, and we've got a little heading and some paragraph breaks that we can work with. And we can see that just like before, it's creating that formatting for us. One thing that you can do instead of using a paragraph or a heading tag is you can use some other specialty formatting tags. Let's try one out. There's one called block quote. Now I'll just set up the middle paragraph here and replace the P tag with a block quote tag. Now, of course, I will replace the end P tag with an end block quote. Let's save our changes, and we'll go up and refresh our page. And you can see that that center paragraph has been indented slightly from the other 2. If I resize the page, you can see that the indenting still carries. So this is a typical block of text that's being called out as different from the paragraphs around it. Interestingly enough, you can stack up block tags. Let's go back to our document, and I'm going to add a second block quote tag inside the first by copying the first tag and pasting it after itself. And of course, I'll need to make sure I have 2 close tags at the end of this as well. So I'll copy that one and paste it at the end. Let's save our changes, and we'll go back and take a look at our page. Now you can see that it's just simply indented a little bit further. Now, block quote is a very old tag, and you may not find people using it as often as they did before. But we have a couple of other tags that come in really handy, and they are contextual tags just like the emphasis and strong tags we saw before. And that is handling of addresses and code. So let's go try these 2 out. For addresses, we have a very specific tag. You can see that right now I'm just using a paragraph. So let's change that to the address tag. I will need a close address tag at the end. And let's save our changes and see how that affects the text. Once I refresh the page, you can see that it's just italicized. But very importantly, that particular piece of content has been called out as an address. So any programs or applications that are scanning my content will actually know where the address is on the page. Now, you can see that that context is much more important than how it looks on the page right now. And as I've said before, when we get to the CSS chapter, we'll be able to change this text completely. Now, there's one more. Down here, I've got a heading for something written by robots. Very often in your page content, you may need to call out a block of text that needs special formatting to make it much easier to read, specifically if we've got something like code down here. I'm currently displaying this code using the same font and style that we do for all the other text styles. And a normal text font uses a variable width font, meaning that large letters are wider than smaller letters. But code is often easier to read if you format it using a monospace font. So I'm just going to go down to the code portion down here. I'll change the P tag to a code tag. And of course, a close code tag. Let's save our changes and refresh the page. Now you can see that that block of text is formatted using a monospace font, and that makes this much easier to read as code with individual elements and syntax.